Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Aaron, and good morning to my fellow tribal leaders. And I just want to recognize all of our tribal leaders. Please stand, tribal leaders, and be recognized. Please stand. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. I truly believe that the Creator has chosen you for this day. Your people have chosen you for this day, and I pray for you that your hearts and your minds would always be only for the thoughts of your people. What can I do for my people? Not to be selfish and thinking, what can I get out of this, but what can I do for my people in the seventh generation? So NCAI thanks you for your commitment to your people, your commitment to your youth, your elders, and your commitment to NCAI for being here. I'd like to thank all of our friends that are here, all of our staffs from our various tribes that travel with us. Your work is immeasurable. We thank you for your dedication to our people. And once again, happy Indigenous Peoples Day. How many of you seen that award-winning movie, Smoke Signals? Do you remember the opening scene where the elder's on top of his van giving the traffic report? One of the best lines, I use it all the time when I give speeches. He said, "It's a good day to be Indigenous." So my name is Spee Potts, and it's a great honor to serve you as the 21st president of NCAI. And once again, we have to thank Phoenix. Just 4 days ago, before we got here, they became the largest city in the U.S. to observe Indigenous Peoples Day. And in my home state of Washington, the city of Seattle made this change last year. And this is a wave that is happening across the U.S. The tide is rising for the respect of your tribal nations. And it's because of the work that you do at the local level that these politicians are starting to understand what it truly means for us to be able to recognize Indigenous Peoples Day. I'm glad that in the proclamation that is required to be issued for the federal holiday, it's a proclamation. The president must make the proclamation on a yearly basis. I want you to understand that President Obama just did not recognize one lost Italian. Thank you. But he also recognized, President Obama didn't say that, by the way, if you didn't hear. He didn't point out one lost Italian. But he also recognized the generation of Indigenous people around this country who have endured broken promises, violence, deprivation, and disease. And those were his words. You know, what a better place to celebrate sovereignty and remembering the challenges and perseverance of our ancestors on Indigenous Peoples Day than at NCAI's 73rd Annual Convention in Marketplace. We are so pleased to be here in Arizona, the land of the sun, which is home to 22 tribal nations. And as I think about the relationship that we have had with Phoenix and the 22 tribal nations, our relationship here at NCAI goes back decades. And it was in our 10th annual conference in 1953 that we first visited Phoenix. 1953. Was anyone here at that time? Ron? I knew I'd have one hand up. Oh, he wasn't here. You were here? No. Yeah. But we've been here many times, and we really, really enjoy coming here to Phoenix. How many enjoy coming here to the land of the sun? Isn't it awesome? The 22 tribal nations that are here represented and their leaders, please stand and be recognized. The 22 tribal leaders of the Arizona community here, the family, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Woo. You've given us a warm welcome, and your typical generous hospitality is beyond measure. And I'm not sure how many of you had the opportunity to go to the opening reception last night, but what an amazing facility you have here. I mean, if you had the opportunity to see that, it is first class. And 21st century tribes, economic development, moving forward, this is what your elders dreamed of. This is what they were hoping for when they laid the foundation for you as leaders to follow in their footsteps. And we couldn't do all of this without our local planning committee, the local tribal leaders, our sponsors, our volunteers, that partnership with NCAI to pull this off at our annual convention. And please join me in thanking the local planning committee, the tribal leaders, our sponsors once again. Please thank them. And once again, our annual convention theme is prosperity through sovereignty. Prosperity through sovereignty. And once again, we've seen that in action last night. And I just hope you get the opportunity to visit some of the tribal communities here and witness their economic development ventures that they have built up. And Lord willing, many of you will be winners when you leave their homelands. Okay, the loosest machines. They loosened up just for us. But when you think of prosperity through sovereignty, it's a simple but potent statement about the power of tribal self-determination. The health and wealth of our nations can only flow from the ability of tribal governments to make decisions for the benefit of our tribal citizens. We say it over and over because it is a fundamental truth. The best source of solutions for the challenges of Indian country is Indian country itself. And we have thousands of years of history to prove it. I thought about this fact as I was flying here the other day. From the air, you could see the waterways of the city that support the economy and the people of the Salt River Valley. Many of these waterways were actually designed hundreds and even thousands of years ago by the Hohokam people living and farming in the Mesa area. Their 500 miles of irrigation canals are widely recognized as a testament to native engineering genius. And of course, we call that native ingenuity. Hey.
I know that wasn't in the
The Otham people claim the Hohokam as their ancestors who provided a perfect example of how indigenous knowledge holds the key to solving life's greatest challenges. Today, there are new doors to open. Indigenous knowledge is being used every day to build strong governments, grow healthy tribal citizens, and develop prosperous tribal communities. For example, the Navajo Nation. We have Navajo Nation representatives out here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is a great success story for the Navajo Nation. It has achieved the significant education reform through self-governance of schools on its lands. Just this past month, the Dene School Accountability Plan was approved by the Department of the Interior. As a result of the accountability plan, the 66 BIE-funded schools on the Navajo Nation will now have equal standards and a strong cultural curriculum. Instead of 3 different state-based plans to measure student performance, the Navajo Nation has created its own vision and its own plan for excellence in education through self-determination, and they are fulfilling that vision for the next generation. On another note, the major legislative accomplishment of this Congress so far has been the Indian Trust Asset Management Reform Act. And once again, tribal leaders, your lobbyists, your staff, who have helped in making this Trust Asset Management Reform Act a possibility, and seeing the President sign it, we thank you. Tribal leaders guided this legislation with a vision for a trust system that promises tribal decision-making about our own lands. Finally, this act places critical resources at our local tribal levels. Once again, it's important to get this legislation passed, but what is doubly important is the implementation plan that goes along with these acts. And sometimes that is harder than getting the act passed itself. And one of the things the law does is create an Undersecretary of Indian Affairs, a brand new position. And the purpose of the Undersecretary is to avoid a siloed organization between the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the Office of Special Trustee. Divisions within the department hamper their ability to make and carry out policy decisions. This structure would create a single line of authority for delivering trust programs and services to tribal communities while we make our own decisions about how to best use our lands. It's a good move, and it's about time. Tribes are also successfully building their capacity for self-management of water resources. And as we gather here in Phoenix, we have to acknowledge the historic Arizona water settlement of 2004, which is the largest water settlement in the history of the United States. The Gila River Indian community's claim for water and damages had been litigated for almost 100 years. The settlement negotiation itself took over 20 years. And the patience and determination of the Acamel, Otham, and Peeposh tribes is an incredible example of how we live according to our indigenous values and how tribal decisions are made with future generations in mind. Putting the decisions about tribal lands into tribal hands is the key to all of our prosperities. We're going to have a robust conversation tomorrow morning about the impact of infrastructure projects on tribal lands. And one such project has become what I call our defining moment. The Dakota Access Pipeline, as we all know it, DAPL. And we must, as tribal leaders, send a unified message to the President. Don't let DAPL be your administration legacy. To our trustees, we tell them, do the right thing. We ask them, conduct a full EIS and deny all permits. As we have come together, as we have stood together, we have shown the world that an attack on the sovereignty of one tribe is an attack on every tribal nation. Our friends and relatives at Standing Rock and people around the world now know that we will not rest until this disaster in waiting has been stopped. Many of you tribe and tribal leaders in here have stood together with Standing Rock, and our voices are strong. Together we have said that we are not going to allow the continued dominance of the pollution-based economy to destroy our homelands. Even after a disappointing court decision yesterday that allowed some of the pipeline work to continue, we will not be deterred. We will continue to fight. We will continue to stand with Standing Rock. And one of our goals this week is to deliver a strong and unified message on the importance of tribal consultation as tribes themselves define it during the federal listening session tomorrow with the Departments of Justice, Departments of Interior, and the Corps of Engineers. But make no mistake, this conversation about infrastructure that impacts tribal lands and the need for tribal involvement is happening because together, as tribal nations, we made it happen. The peaceful and powerful gathering of tribes standing shoulder to shoulder with Standing Rock amplifies the voice of Indian country, and the federal government heard us loud and clear. But the impact of our collective action rises far above the result of a single pipeline project. The strength of our unification ripples far beyond the impact of a single tribe. When one tribe takes a step forward for self-governance, it's a step forward for all of us. And when one tribe lifts itself up through the power of self-determination, we are all lifted up. I'd like to recognize the Pasquayaki, the Tulalip tribes, the Umatilla tribe, Fort Peck, and the Sisseton, Wahpeton, Oyate tribes. These 5 tribes accepted the pilot program to expand tribal jurisdiction under the Violence Against Women Act. We're already seeing positive effects. This program significantly increased prosecutions of non-Native offenders of domestic violence crime. It also revealed the troubling limitations in the protection of Native children in many of these cases. And NCAI continues to work with all tribes and policymakers to reaffirm tribal jurisdiction in child abuse cases and drug cases. We look at the Confederated Tribes of Umatilla, who have reshaped their child welfare system. Now 70% more Umatilla children are thriving with their families in their home communities, a sign of success in the 21st century. We look at the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes, who developed new skills training, job placement, and professional mentoring programs for their people, and they cut their tribal employment in half as a result of it. We look at how the tribes of South Dakota have come together to protect Bear Butte from the degradation that would come from the world's largest biker bar constructing a giant campground on the fringe of a precious sacred site. And each one of these expressions of tribal self-determination opens the door for the next advancement. And let's give these tribes a round of applause for the work that they are doing for all of us. And as we think about NCAI as a national organization that recognizes what happens locally and regionally can impact all of Indian country, we are your forum to come together to face our challenges and seek solutions as one. That is why we stand on the principle of protecting our homelands, our resources, and our cultural history, whether in Oak Flats, Uinta Basin, or Gila River. That is why when we experience challenges with delivery of our health, like the tribes in the Great Plains, we work together to improve the systems that provide critical health care to all tribal citizens. And we support the land into trust process for tribes in Alaska, finally. Alaska tribes, just like all tribes in the nation, need to have their land protected for their inherent rights. And I'd just like to say that, NCAI here, we don't speak for any tribe. That is not our purpose. I speak for the Swinomish tribe, but we advocate for 567 nations and state-recognized tribes. We are your Congress. We know that the work is hard, and our staff, through the leadership of Jackie, does incredible work. If you just see some of the transition documents that you helped us frame, if you look at the last 100 days of this administration, things we want to accomplish, it's an incredible amount of work, and we have a small staff, and they do an incredible job. Let's give our NCAI staff a big round of applause for all the work they do for us. And this week we will meet to talk about the issues that are important to our tribal nations, issues that will even take our citizens to the polls in November. And we will adopt the resolutions that guide NCAI's advocacy on your behalf. And I don't need to remind you that we are only 1 month away from one of the most important elections that will shape not only the next 4 years, but the next generation, because of the importance of the Supreme Court and the impact it might have on tribal nations. So I encourage you, get out the vote. This vote is not for you, it's for your children and your grandchildren. We've seen successes in the Supreme Court, and we'll learn about that this last year. We're seeing a change in the way that they think there, but we need to continue to foster that change. It is our responsibility to ensure that the next Congress and the next administration treats tribes as equal partners in decision-making and in creating policies that benefit all of our tribal communities. Part of that responsibility is getting our tribal citizens out to vote and elect tribal champions. The outcome of elections is hugely important to Indian country. The results of getting out the native vote can last for years and generations. Last week I was on our river, the Skagit River. It's the third largest river on the West Coast. And it's the only river that still has every species of wild salmon in the lower 48 spawning in its tributaries. We refer to it as the magic Skagit, and that's a sad statement when you think of all the river systems in the lower 48, and the one that we co-manage is the only one that still has all the species of wild salmon on there. I was there with my 83-year-old dad, and his deckhand is my 66-year-old uncle. I was there with my brother. I was there with my grandson, Nathaniel. And I said, as we were all sitting there, tied up waiting for our turn to lay out, that I said, there are 4 generations on our river today exercising our sovereignty, our treaty rights to fish as a family. And my 4-year-old grandson, Nathaniel, looks at me and says, I'm a generation? That was priceless. It was a memory that will last forever. And I was filled with pride for the great accomplishment of the Swinomish people. And I believe I have 3 of my council members with me today. Brian Wilbur, Brian John, Joe Williams. Thank you guys for being here. And actually, believe it or not, I didn't make this rule up, but right now there's 11 of us on our council and 5 of us are named Brian. OMG is right, Juana. I think about my great-great-grandfather who signed the treaty, my dad's great-grandfather, who signed our treaty to ensure that our fishing rights would be protected. And our tribal leaders today will ensure that my grandson and his grandchildren can continue to fish that river just as we do today. Any day on the river is a good day. And I'd like to recognize Lorraine Loomish. She's been my fisheries manager for 45 years, managing that Skagit River. Lorraine, please be recognized. She's the chairman of the Northwest Indian Fish Commission, following in the footsteps of our great elder leader, Billy Frank Jr. So, once again, thank you for being here. Thank you, tribal leaders, for bringing your youth. Like Aaron said, we had an opportunity to do some work with them last night, and it is just unbelievable to see our next generation and the decisions that are making for their future, and I thank you for that. At this time, I'd like to take a moment to recognize one of our local leaders, White Mountain Apache Chairman Ronnie Loopy. Chairman Loopy is a Marine Corps veteran of the Korean War, yes, which in itself is a distinction. After returning home, he was elected in 1964 to the White Mountain Apache Tribal Council at the age of 34. 2 years later, he was elected to serve as tribal chair, the youngest person ever elected to this position, and is currently serving his 9th term in that office. Chairman Loopy was also an NCAI first vice president in 1971 and 1972. He is deeply rooted in his culture, speaks fluent Apache, and has a vision for building the economy of his tribe. Over the past 5 decades, he has been a warrior for the sovereign authority of his tribe and the right to self-manage its land and its resources. For 52 years, Chairman Loopy has served his people as a member of the White Mountain Apache governing body and helped advance self-determination for all Indian country. If Chairman Loopy is in the crowd, I'd like to ask him to stand so we could recognize you and give you a big round of applause. All right, could you, Chairman Loopy, did you get the picture? Oh, Chairman Loopy, could you stand one more time? We need to get an official NCAI picture here. Okay, look at the pretty lady to your right there. Great, thank you. Once again, thank you, Chairman Loopy. In closing, we are embarking on a period of change, but we know that change creates opportunity. to educate, to partner, and to modernize the relationship between tribes and the federal government. Just look at the opportunity that Indian country created when the Obama administration came in just 8 short years ago. At the White House Tribal Nations Conference last month, we talked about many achievements of Indian country under the Obama administration and the ways we've partnered to advance tribal self-governance. I will say it again. The standard we set for the government-to-government relationship over the past 8 years is no longer the new ceiling, it is our new floor. And as we work with the new administration, we will continue to remind them we are 21st century tribal governments, and we know exactly how best to serve our families. We have to remind them we want a partner in governing, not a parent. We want a trustee who is worthy of our trust. We demand that the promises made to us be kept. And if they're up to the challenge, and if they continue to build on the legacy of the Obama administration, our best days and the best days for the United States are surely yet to come. I'm looking forward to a week of amazing sessions and exchanges that meaningfully move our tribal nations toward prosperity through sovereignty. Thank you to all of you for bringing your voice and vision to this important work, and thank you for the hard work you do every day to improve the quality of life for your tribal families. God bless each and every one of you, and God bless the National Congress of American Indians.